I was bullied by my sister, ignored by my parents, and left home at 18. Years later, they contacted me for financial help for my sister. For years, my parents disregarded my elder sister's harsh bullying, so I moved out at the age of 18. 6 years later, they wanted us to reconcile, so they contacted me with the awful news. But it backfired on them because my older sister, Rose, was a huge bully all my life. Living with her was sometimes terrible and tough. To be honest, Rose has ADHD. Her continual hyperactivity and aggression made her a difficult person to live with, especially during our childhood. Rose was 5 years old when I was born, and her reaction to my presence was anything but welcome. She was always uncomfortable with the attention I received from our parents. It's not uncommon for older siblings to feel jealous or displaced by a new baby, but Rose's emotions were very strong. She would throw full-blown tantrums whenever my parents spent time with me, as if my very presence offended her. All I remember from my youth is my sister snatching all of my toys. She would snatch them away without hesitation. Birthdays, which should have been pleasant occasions for me, turned into mayhem. Rose would shout, cry, and stage a theatrical scene, completely overshadowing my jubilation. Instead of feeling special on my special day, I was frequently humiliated by my sister's actions. As I grew older, Rose's actions got more targeted. She began to physically lash out at me. She would sometimes shove me out of the way, even when there was no need for it. Other times, she would bite me, which felt intentionally painful and malicious. It was evident that her dislike for me was more than just a phase. She seemed to resent me for taking the spotlight and ruining the interaction she had with our parents before my arrival. Rose has never had any pals. My parents would plan playdates in an attempt to make her feel included, but those should have been fun times, evolving into stressful, uncomfortable experiences. I had to continually mediate or apologize for her actions. Over the years, I couldn't help but harbor tremendous anger for my sister. I couldn't understand why she didn't behave like other people or why she couldn't manage her emotions. She also didn't seem to like me much and would frequently pick conflicts with me. Living with her was confusing and upsetting. I wished for a sister who would protect me, not one who continuously tortured me or made me feel unwanted. What made things worse was my parents' lack of concern for me. They adored Rose, and it seemed like they were completely unaware of how her bullying was impacting me. Every time I tried to express my emotions or explain how much her behavior upset me, they dismissed it. They'd explained to me that Rose was a special kid who required my understanding and patience at all times. Even though I was younger than her, I was expected to satisfy her demands and moods, even if it meant sacrificing my own happiness. I remember when I turned 13, I spent days urging my parents to make it a memorable trip for just the three of us. After much appealing and arguing, they finally reached an agreement. The plan was set: Rose would spend 3 days with our grandparents, and I would finally get my moment. But when Rose found out, she had a major rage. Crying uncontrollably for hours, cursing, throwing things, and even getting in my face, screaming threats that she would kill me for attempting to take our parents away from her. To be honest, seeing her rage focused at me was horrifying and overpowering. Instead of sticking up for me, my parents started begging with me to let Rose join us. They tried to argue with me, explaining that it was the only way to calm her down. I resisted at first, knowing deep down that if she came, my fantasy trip would be shattered. But with Rose raving furiously and my parents desperate, I felt forced to give in once again. Her actions determined the outcome, and I was forced to accommodate her, as I had anticipated. Bringing Rose turned the vacation into another fiasco. From the moment we arrived at Disneyland, she refused to enjoy anything like other children. She refused to sit on any of the rides and remained close to my mother the entire time. She was continually complaining about being overwhelmed by the throng and how much she disliked everything. Her shouts and cries immediately became the focus of everyone's attention, drowning out the joy I'd been building up for weeks. Within 2 hours, Rose was pleading with my parents to take us back to the hotel, severely ruining what should have been a perfect day. In the end, my parents had to split up to make this situation more manageable. My mother drove Rose back to the hotel, and my father stayed with me so I could try to salvage what was left of the day. While I appreciated my father's efforts, the overall experience felt tainted. My birthday was not the pleasant and carefree event I had hoped for, as Rose's wants and tantrums took precedence once more. I know my parents did their best with the cards they were handed, but it was brutally clear that my sister's needs and priorities always came first. Rose wanted their attention at all times, and no matter what I did, I was always relegated to the background. While they believed they were doing the right thing by helping Rose, it frequently left me feeling invisible, as if my needs and feelings were insignificant in comparison to hers. By the time I turned 17, I had had enough of my sister's incessant bullying and my parents' constant ignorance. I began fantasizing of freedom, of finally enjoying a life unencumbered by my sister's needs or my parents' demands. I started applying to colleges, focusing on those far away from home. When my parents learned about my plans, they were furious. They did not understand, or perhaps refused to see, why I felt compelled to leave. They persuaded and virtually begged me to remain in our hometown. They argued that Rose needed me, that I was her sibling, and that it was my job to be there for her. I argued back, emphasizing that I didn't care about Rose and would continue to apply to remote institutions regardless of how they felt. My parents revealed the actual reason they wanted me to stay: their retirement plan. They intended to travel and enjoy their life while expecting me to bear full responsibility for Rose. They informed me about how they had been sacrificing their lives for years, waiting for my time to stand forward. First and foremost, I had never been consulted about my parents' long-term plans, and I had never given them any reason to assume I would be willing to accept care for my sister. Second, I had no intention of becoming her caretaker. I wasn't her dad, and it seemed unjust and absurd to expect it from me. I explained it to them as fully as I could. I also proposed alternate possibilities, such as hiring a full-time caregiver or teaching Rose to be more self-sufficient at least for a few days at a period, so they could continue to enjoy their retirement. My mother stated that Rose would never be comfortable with a caretaker and insisted on 24-hour surveillance, which could only be provided by a family member, meaning me. My father agreed, even accusing me of being selfish for refusing to participate in their absurd idea. Their remarks stung deeply. As if that wasn't enough, my father then confessed that the entire reason they had me, their second child, was so that I might grow up and take care of Rose in the future. I froze. My thoughts whirled as the weight of that discovery fell on me. I stared at them silently, my eyes wide with disbelief. My mother instantly intervened, chastising my father for disclosing that secret and instructing him to apologize. She then tried to backtrack, stating he didn't mean it and that, of course, they loved me as well, but her comments rang hollow. The damage was done. I couldn't unhear what he said. And it was then that I realized why I'd always felt invisible in comparison to my sister. The fact that my existence had been portrayed as a solution to Rose's care, rather than as my own person with my own goals, was upsetting. My mother insisted that Rose needed care and that, as a member of the family, I had a responsibility to her. She even argued that attending college far away would not benefit my life in any way and that staying in our community was a better alternative. Living at home, she reasoned, would save me money on rent and other bills. I understood Rose's predicament, but did that mean I didn't deserve a life of my own? Did I have to give up my future just because she existed? The thought was suffocating. I didn't say anything to my parents at the time, knowing it wouldn't change their opinions, but within, I was more determined than ever to escape. I ignored their appeals and plunged myself into my college applications, determined to avoid them. It wasn't easy, but I worked tirelessly, and my efforts eventually paid off. I eventually got into a decent enough college to make the effort worthwhile. Obviously, when I told my parents, they were outraged. They refused to let me go and did everything they could to guilt-trip me into staying. Although I was 18, I knew I still needed support to get away from my parents, so I turned to my grandparents. I contacted, appealing for their assistance. My grandma, who has always been a solid and caring presence in my life, came over right away. She helped me pack my bags and documents, and offered me a place to stay with her and my grandfather till I left for college. But my parents did not stop there. They threatened to cut me off financially, refusing to cover any of my educational fees. They informed me that if I left, I would be on my own forever, and they would cut all relations with me. Even so, I refused to give in. I took out a student loan to help support my schooling. On top of that, my grandfather offered to cover some of my bills using his retirement savings. Accepting his help crushed my heart because I knew how hard he and my grandma had worked for that money. They were doing what my parents should have done, providing love, encouragement, and financial assistance. The subsequent 4 years of my life were a whirlwind of hard work and perseverance. College was tough, not only academically but also emotionally. While most of my peers had supportive parents and enough money to go out, I did not have the same luxury. Almost every day, I studied as hard as I could to support myself financially. I even took on a part-time job as a server, juggling long days and late nights around my studies. Those years were difficult, but I persevered because I knew there was no other option. Meanwhile, my parents never contacted me, not once, to ask how I was doing or if I needed anything. They maintained a deafening hush. Sometimes I questioned my worth, wondering if I truly deserved to be abandoned by those who were meant to love me unconditionally. But even then, I refused to give up, telling myself that if I kept going, I'd finally make a life for myself. After graduation, I was really fortunate to get an excellent job. It was the opportunity one had been working so hard for. And it seemed like the first true payoff for all of my years of sacrifices. With this work, I was finally able to start repaying my college loans. More importantly, I began repaying the money my grandfather had given me to help when my parents refused. He never wanted me to repay him. It was a gift of love, not a loan. But it meant a lot to me to lessen his burden and demonstrate that his trust in me was not misplaced. I maintain a close, loving relationship with my grandparents. Whenever possible, I arrange for them to pay me a visit and express my gratitude for everything they've done for me. This year, I started hearing alarming things about my sister from my grandparents. Rose's behavior appears to have worsened with time, and now that I am no longer her target, she has turned her bullying on others. She just began bullying the neighborhood youngsters. Apparently, she had been throwing water at the kids whenever they played outside and intimidating them by saying that they weren't allowed to play in her area. Unsurprisingly, the kids' parents were concerned and complained to my parents several times, urging them to address Rose's actions and keep her away from their children. However, as usual, my parents did not take appropriate action. They expected Rose would eventually become bored and leave the youngsters alone. However, Rose maintained her shenanigans, and the situation erupted when one of the parents, fed up with her relentless bullying, contacted the cops. When the cops arrived, they noticed Rose throwing water at one of the children and screamed at her to flee for her life. Rose was immediately detained for allegedly harassing minors. My parents objected, but the police chastised them as well for failing to keep Rose under control. While this news has stunned some members of the family, it does not surprise me at all. I'd witnessed her unrestrained conduct for years, knowing full well that my parents were more interested in creating excuses for her than holding her accountable. Nonetheless, the fact that my sister was now in legal jeopardy was a stark reminder of how disturbing her behavior had become. My parents ended up bailing her out, but Rose is now facing a court date this week. I received a call from my parents that caught me off guard. After 6 years of silence, seeing their phone number on my phone seemed weird. My father told me that he and my mother were at their wits' end dealing with my sister. He claimed they wanted to reconcile with me, that they had missed me for years but had been too furious and stubborn about my decision to leave for college to contact me. It seemed as if he was attempting to rewrite the story, wiping away years of pain and abandonment with a half-hearted apology. I could tell he and Mom had called me for something, so I told them to spit it out. That's when Dad indicated that with my sister's approaching court appearance, they were finally seeing the truth, that perhaps I had been correct all along about my sister. My father admitted, hesitantly, that my sister was a bully. He claimed that she had gotten worse over the years since I had left, and was getting into more serious trouble. Dad informed me how he and Mom had talked, and that he now felt sorry for what I had been through. He admitted that they should have listened to me more. He also informed me that they were finally willing to send Rose to therapy so she could receive the assistance she clearly required. Hearing those comments from Dad felt bizarre, especially since I had spent so much of my life urging him and Mom to take action against my sister, only to be dismissed or taught to accept Rose's actions. Dad went on saying they wanted to meet with me and apologize in person, if I was willing to listen. That's when I informed my dad, as quietly as I could, that while I was relieved that they were finally providing my sister with the assistance she required, the truth was that I no longer cared. They had been ignoring me for far too long. Over time, I accepted their absence and constructed a life without them. I wasn't willing to reconcile with them just now. My father then tried to get me to reconsider. Am I an AITA if I don't reconcile with my family, especially given how they've treated me for years? Update 1. I want to clarify a few points because I can't respond to everyone in the comments. No. My sister was never bullied. She attended a special school developed for children with similar disabilities, and it was a tiny, closely regulated environment. The school only accepted a small number of special needs kids who were closely monitored during the day. Her instructors were wonderful and provided good care for her. And my parents were constantly active in her life, checking in on her on a daily basis. There's no way my sister was bullied at school and took out her frustration on me. The truth is that her troubles were never caused by outside influences. They were caused by how she was allowed to behave at home. My parents tolerated her frequent mistreatment of me. If she bit me, slapped me, or shoved me, she would face no consequences. Meanwhile, I was always expected to console Rose or be more sympathetic to her actions. As for why Rose was never sent to therapy, the simple reality is that it has always been too expensive for my parents to consider. Furthermore, my mother has always maintained a possessive attitude about Rose. She never let her spend much time with anyone else since she believed that only she knew Rose's needs. As a result, Rose is too reliant on my mother, who makes all decisions for her. Now that I've read through all of the comments on my post, I understand why my parents are reaching out after all this time. The explanation is obvious. They most likely require my assistance with my sister's future case. I believe they may want me to provide a character reference for her, if that is necessary. Or they may be hoping I can help with the lawyer bills because I make a good living and they are aware of this. After all these years, it cannot simply be about reuniting. It appears to be a desperate attempt to rectify things, especially given Rose's legal troubles. They need someone to back her up, and I assume they believe I am that person. I am sure they want me to step in and be the good son who helps them clean up their mess, but I am not going to do it. Update 2. For those wondering how my grandparents feel about my parents trying to reconnect with me, they're not delighted. They haven't communicated much to my parents throughout the years, especially since I was kicked out and wanted to go to college. Since then, their relationship has been rocky, and they have generally maintained their distance. My grandparents have only maintained contact with my parents because they occasionally help out with Rose, whether it's babysitting or caring for her when my parents need it. My grandparents understand exactly what Rose is like, They've witnessed her conduct personally, including her bullying, and are dissatisfied with how my parents have handled everything over the years. They've always been supportive of me, but they've never dismissed Rose's actions. So, with my parents now wishing to make amends and reconnect with me, my grandparents have made it obvious that they understand my reluctance. They have asked me to be cautious. They understand how devastated I have been as a result of my parents' actions, and they do not want me to rush into anything that could wind up being much more traumatic. My folks have also continued to message me all week. They strongly urge me to consider giving them another shot. They keep saying how much they regret the way things have been between us, and how they've recognized they made mistakes. As a result, I'm torn. Update 3. My concerns regarding my parents were correct. Today, after weeks of asking, I finally consented to a video conversation with them. It had been a long time since we'd seen each other, and I was feeling a range of emotions building up to the call. When I finally saw them on TV, I couldn't help but note how different they appeared. They were considerably older than I remembered, tired and worn out. It crushed my heart to see them like that. Despite the emotions churning inside me, I attempted to remain calm. We chatted about their lives, how things had gone for them, and I told them a little bit about my business. We talked about my grandparents and caught up on family news. Our talks seemed nearly regular, as if no time had gone since I last saw them. My parents apologized to me again. They appeared almost desperate in their statements, inviting me to come see them and stating that they had been thinking about me. But at that point, I couldn't hold back anymore. I questioned them outright. Why now, after all? If they genuinely missed me, wouldn't they have contacted me sooner? During college, while I was gone and needed their help, they made no effort to stay in touch. So, what changed now? Why were they so ready to reconcile after so much time apart? That's when my parents almost unwillingly began to divulge the real reason they had contacted me. They claimed that they were in severe need of financial assistance to care for my sister, Rose. My father told me that they had depleted practically all of their savings over the years due to Rose's ongoing medical procedures. The bills had exhausted them, and now, with her court case waiting and the possibility of requiring therapy for her behavioral disorders, the financial strain was becoming insurmountable. My father finally begged me, almost pleadingly, if I could start sending them money every month because I was doing so well in life. My mother soon stepped in, emphasizing that the money would only be used for Rose and nothing else. I shook my head in answer, feeling a knot form in my stomach. I implored them, my voice quivering with rage. Do you really think I would just send you my hard-earned money to spend on Rose? I was straining to contain my rage. No matter how much you need it, how could I possibly assist you with her? She was the one who bullied me for years. She's the one that made my life miserable. She's the one who destroyed every birthday party I've ever had. My voice cracked as I continued. She is the one who has never shown any sympathy or concern for me, so why should I aid her now? My history with Rose was so unpleasant, and now they expected me to jump in and be the financial rescuer for someone who had treated me so badly. It didn't make sense, and I couldn't let go of years of pain. I did not stop there, however. All of my frustration and years of bottled-up resentment came spilling out. I pointed out to my parents that they had never kept me safe from Rose. They'd never given me genuine compassion when it came to her. Instead, they simply expected me to follow suit, to buy into their story, and to care for her as if everything she did was something I had to accept. I was a youngster, and I needed their protection, but they had let me down several times. I explained that just because Rose has ADHD does not mean she should not be held accountable for her conduct. Now that she is an adult, I blamed my parents and made it plain that if they had given her proper care when she was younger, things could have turned out differently. Now, perhaps she would have grown into a better person, capable of realizing the pain she causes others. But they didn't. They had let her get away with so much that she was eventually jailed for pestering young children. Even after this, they kept urging me to intervene and assist her as if I weren't her first victim. My parents attempted to argue back, but I informed them that while I appreciated their apologies, it did not mean I would simply forgive and forget everything that had happened. My parents backed down after hearing this. They told me that regardless of whether I could help them financially, they wanted to keep working on our relationship. Mom informed me that she and Dad regretted they had made other decisions back then, but because they couldn't erase the past, they wanted to be there for me in whatever way they could going forward. On the one hand, I applauded their eagerness to move forward, but on the other, I wasn't sure I was ready to let go of all the sorrow I'd been carrying for so long. I asked for some time to think. Update 4. I apologize for the month-long gap between updates. My sister has been compelled to attend court-mandated counseling, which I believe is a step in the right way. My parents also had to pay a significant fine as a result of Rose's harassment of those children. I honestly expected my sister's punishment would be harsher, but I guess the judge was lenient because this was Rose's first formal crime. In addition, some of the children's parents have filed a restraining order against my sister. Rose is now legally compelled to stay far away from their children. If she breaks the order, she will be arrested. Now back to my parents. Since that conversation in which I declined to grant them any financial assistance, they have not mentioned it again. We have continued to chat, but only about minor details. I guess they meant what they said and are just trying to rebuild their relationship with me. Although I am glad to be back in their life, I am not ready to resume a full connection with my family. Especially with Rose. I don't think I'll ever forgive her. No matter how much time passes, the things she did to me, bullying me, making my life miserable for so many years, cannot simply be wiped. I hope that through counseling, she will finally learn to hold herself accountable for her actions. To be honest, I have no idea how long it will take or if it will ever happen. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My wife brought her boyfriend home to announce her pregnancy. A web of lies, gun threats, and betrayal that shattered our family forever. Unaware that I was filming everything. My wife brought her boyfriend home to announce her pregnancy. But when I brought up the subject of divorce, he threatened me with a gun. Both of them are currently being charged with crimes. Sarah, 45F, and I, 47M, have been wed for 22 years. We were married shortly after graduating from college, having met through mutual acquaintances. My first and only committed relationship was with Sarah. While I developed my profession in software development, she worked as a marketing executive. Before everything broke apart last month, I believed that our marriage was going well. Our two children are Mike, 17M, a high school junior, and Jenny, 20F, a psychology major in her second year in college. Sarah joined a new gym approximately 4 months ago, which is when the issue began. She stated that she wished to lose weight before her 46th birthday. She stated that she would rather go alone in order to concentrate on herself, but I agreed with her choice and even offered to accompany her. I was initially pleased to see her taking care of herself. She began going to the gym more frequently, sometimes twice a day. I didn't question it because it appeared like she was happier and more lively. Then, however, things began to shift. She altered her haircut, bought brand new clothes, and spent all of her time on her phone. She would immediately switch apps or turn off her phone screen when I entered the room. She also said that her team had taken on a large project for a new customer, which caused them to start working late. She wouldn't always return home until 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I didn't give it much thought because I had total faith in her. I even took care of the kids' needs so she could concentrate on her work and made sure dinner was ready for her when she got home. However, we had less sex. She always had an excuse for not wanting to get intimate, like she was exhausted, had a headache, or had to get up early. For nearly 3 months, we went from having personal moments 2 or 3 times a week to none at all. I assumed she was under stress at work, so I didn't bring up the subject again. She texted me on a Friday night, 3 weeks ago, stating that she needed to talk to me about something crucial. I assumed she wanted to discuss our forthcoming summer vacation plans or that she had received the promotion she had been looking for. We had the home to ourselves because Mike was at football practice and Jenny was at her university library. Sarah wasn't by herself when she got home. She was accompanied by a tall, strong man who was most likely in his late 30s. Derek, 39M, was his name. When she introduced him, Sarah revealed to us that she was 3 months pregnant, and that Derek was the father. As we sat down in the living room, the same space where we had celebrated our 20th anniversary 2 years prior, she claimed that they had a strong connection after meeting at the gym 8 months prior. She claimed that although she hadn't been content in our marriage for years, she had never had the guts to speak up. She said I didn't comprehend her emotional needs since I was too preoccupied with my work. With a smug expression on his face, Derek simply sat there, periodically massaging Sarah's back as though to console her. She clarified that they intended to begin a new life together after falling in love. She had spent the late evenings with him, not at work. They were meeting at the gym and going to his apartment, so it wasn't always just for working out. I thought I was in a strange nightmare. This woman, who had shed happy tears at Jenny's high school graduation, was the one who had helped me recover from pneumonia 3 years ago prior. She was seated in our house, now telling me that she was expecting a kid from another man. I told them both to get out right away. Things became ugly at that point. Derek got up and began shouting that, since Sarah owned half the house, I couldn't throw her out. According to him, I had to man up and acknowledge that Sarah had moved on to someone better. I remained composed and informed them that they had to leave my house immediately because I would be filing for divorce early on Monday morning. Puffing up his chest like some phony macho person, Derek got in my face. Since he wouldn't allow me to interfere with his woman and his baby, he advised me to keep an eye on myself. I was uneasy about his tone, so I had already begun recording everything on my phone and partially concealed it behind a cushion on the couch. I said again that they had to go. Derek took a gun out of his waistband. At that point, he pointed it right at my chest and threatened to make sure I felt bad if I attempted to make things tough on Sarah during the divorce. He claimed to be aware of my workplace, the children's school, and the fact that accidents happen all the time. Sarah remained silent as this man brandished a gun and threatened her husband of 22 years. She didn't act shocked that he was carrying a firearm, nor did she attempt to stop him. Her face was expressionless as she stared. I immediately phoned the police when they left and played the recording for them. Derek was taken into custody that evening for threatening to commit a crime while brandishing a lethal weapon. Sarah was also taken into custody for her involvement in the threat. The following day, they were both released on bail. Everything fell apart when the children noticed the police cruisers outside our house when they got home. When I told Jenny what had happened, she started crying. Mike secluded himself in his bedroom for 2 days after punching a hole in the wall. He only came out when I assured him that we would overcome this together. Both parents have been phoning constantly. Sarah informed her parents that I had been emotionally distant and that she felt stuck in our marriage. So they believe I'm being too severe and should drop the charges because she's pregnant and stressed. In contrast, my parents are enraged and want me to pursue every aspect of the divorce. I filed for divorce the following morning. According to my attorney, the tape will be very beneficial for the divorce and criminal case. Sarah has been phoning and messaging nonstop, accusing Derek of manipulating her and claiming she made a horrible error. She asserted that she would never wish to harm me and was unaware that he was armed. However, the footage reveals that she didn't appear startled or afraid when he produced the firearm. I've instructed her to contact us solely through our attorneys and blocked her number. The children won't talk to her. Jenny claims that she will never be able to forgive her mother for ruining our family. In addition to failing 2 classes, Mike's football coach called to report that he had been fighting during practice. We lost 22 years of marriage because she was unable to remain faithful. I glanced at our wedding pictures last night. We were quite joyful and youthful. I now have to go in court against her for the threats charged the following week. I have no regrets about bringing charges in my own home. No one brandishes a pistol to threaten me, certainly not in front of the pictures of my kids that hang on the wall. First update: 2 weeks have passed since my last post. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for their encouraging words and remarks. When I thought everything was crumbling, you kept me going. Let me now explain what has transpired since then. Last week was the hearing for the threat case. My lawyer and I got to the courthouse early. Derek and Sarah arrived together, both dressed as though they were attending church. Sarah kept attempting to get my attention, but I was preoccupied with my phone. Their attorney, a slick man in a fancy suit, attempted to portray me as an angry, domineering spouse who threatened to leave Sarah bankrupt and homeless. He asserted that Derek only displayed the firearm out of concern for Sarah's security. The recording was then played by my lawyer. Everything was audible, including Derek's threats to find out where my children attended school and, most significantly, Sarah's total quiet while her lover brandished a gun to threaten her husband. Their features turned pale. The trial date was scheduled for next month by the clearly irate judge. Additionally, she issued a restraining order that mandates they both keep at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my place of employment. I was mistaken to believe that would be the most significant change. My door was knocked on yesterday morning. A woman in her mid-30s was standing there, holding a big folder. When I opened it, she identified herself as Derek's wife, Amy, 36F. Yes. You read correctly. Derek is married and has 3 children, ages 9, 6, and 12. After reading about Derek's arrest in the local newspaper, Amy learned about Sarah and the pregnancy. She has been conducting her own research ever since, and the results are startling. She presented evidence that Derek had previously done this. He got acquainted with a woman at his former job 2 years ago, got her pregnant, and then vanished when she was 7 months pregnant. The mother was forced to return to her parents' house and raise the child by herself. Here's where it gets worse, though. Amy showed me text messages from months ago that were exchanged between Derek and Sarah. They were scheming, not only having an affair to obtain the majority of my assets in the divorce, but they had a full plan in place. The text indicated that they believed Sarah would receive a larger payout if they could incite me to act violently or foolishly. The threat of a gun wasn't spontaneous, rather, it was planned. Derek wrote the following in a message: "I'll contribute when we inform him. I'll give him a small scare. If he becomes hostile in this manner, you will receive everything, and he would know not to fight the divorce." Sarah answered, "Great plan, sweetie. He will most likely cry because he is such a coward." I sent the DA's office and my attorney all of this proof. In addition to the current threats charge, the DA is now thinking of charging conspiracy. Sarah began phoning me non-stop after learning of the new proof, crying and saying she was unaware Derek was married. She said that he tricked her into agreeing to the entire scheme. The text messages, however, indicate otherwise. She was fully aware of his wife and children as the other woman. She even made jokes about Amy being too stupid to notice her husband's affair. As Jenny searched Sarah's drawer for some old family photos, the situation became even more intriguing. I was unaware that she had discovered a second phone. It had communications from over a year ago, before revealing their pregnancy. Sarah and Derek had been preparing for this for months because they believed that I wouldn't fight back as hard if there was a baby involved. They purposely waited until she was showing before telling me. The effect on our children has been catastrophic. Except for school, Mike still hardly ever leaves his room. His football coach called to report that he has been watching from the stands throughout practices and he is now failing 3 classes. Jenny is constantly upset. She texted Sarah to let her know she was dead to her, and that she would never want to see her again. "You'll understand when you're older and fall in love," was the straightforward message Sarah wrote back. I provided copies of the text messages to Sarah's parents, who then came to my house. They were appalled in my living room. Her father, who had been arguing for her behavior and pleading with me to dismiss the charges, started crying. He insisted that he didn't bring up his daughter to be like this. They no longer answer her calls either. According to my attorney, Sarah won't receive anything in the divorce because of this new information. She will lose the property division because of the deliberate nature of their scheme and the conspiracy to scare me. But in all honesty, I simply want her out of our lives and don't care about the money anymore. I'm not married to the woman in those text messages. She is a stranger who sat in our bed and ate meals with our family for months, planning how to ruin me. Yesterday, Jenny inquired if I ever had any suspicions. In actuality, I didn't. I had total faith in Sarah. I never imagined that she would do this. Even while she was working late, going to the gym twice a day, and no longer wanting to be intimate after 22 years of marriage. I never once asked her late at night or checked her phone. I now see that she called me stupid for having faith in her and laughed at my trust in her partner. Second update. My last update was 1 month ago. Things have taken a number of unexpected turns since the divorce proceedings began last week. Since what has transpired is so amazing, I must share it. Sarah tried to play the victim at the start of the divorce court. She said that Derek had forced and persuaded her into taking part in their plan in a tearful account. Her attorney described how Derek used her loneliness as a weak woman stuck in an emotionally distant marriage. She also called a coworker to testify about how she used to cry about our allegedly tumultuous marriage in the break room. However, following the events of the criminal trial, her act utterly collapsed. Derek chose to accept a plea bargain since he was facing severe jail time for the gun threat if he testified about their conspiracy. The DA offered him a restraining order and 2 years of probation. He accepted the offer, and everything changed when he came clean in court. Derek threw Sarah under the bus during his plea hearing. He acknowledged that she had come up with the entire plan from the beginning. She knew he was a successful real estate agent from his social media and had seen him at the gym. Instead of going the other way, she went to him. He testified that she had checked his Facebook profile and seen photos of his family, so she knew he was married from the start. Derek claims that Sarah told him she wanted to leave me because she was unhappy in her marriage, but she wanted to make sure she received the highest settlement possible. She specifically picked him since he had a concealed carry permit and an imposing appearance. She came up with the threat of a pistol. She believed that when I invariably reacted aggressively to threats, it would demonstrate my abuse. When the paternity test results were revealed in court, however, it was the biggest shock. Derek is not the father, but Sarah is unquestionably pregnant. Her personal trainer, a 25-year-old man called Chad, is the owner of the child. It seems that she was having an affair with Chad at the gym while she was hatching plans with Derek. Derek lost it all when this information was revealed in court. He began to yell that she had damaged his marriage for no reason at all. He believed that she would divorce me, seize half of my possessions, and then wed him. He was furious to learn that she had been sleeping with someone else the whole time. He had to be taken out of the courtroom by the BFFs. Chad was subpoenaed and appeared to testify. He was unaware of Sarah's marriage. She informed him that she was divorced and that her father was the parent of her 2 grown children. She even introduced Jenny and Mike as her niece and nephew while they were at the gym. In the court correspondence, Chad displayed Sarah's invitation to move in with him following the completion of her divorce from her abusive ex-husband. What little credibility Sarah still had was shattered by this revelation. Her own attorney seemed repulsed. After the court declared a recess, Sarah completely lost it. When we got back, the judge was unimpressed as she began to scream about how everyone was against her and that she was just trying to find happiness. Sarah's career has collapsed in the interim. When her firm reported the court cases via a background check for a promotion, it discovered the conspiracy and the criminal charges. Because of their zero-tolerance policy for unethical activity, they fired her right away. The tale has gone viral in our professional network, and she hasn't been able to find another marketing job since. She is unable to pay for an apartment. She has now moved in with her sister. Sarah continued attempting to get in touch with the children, sending lengthy emails expressing her regret and pleading for their support throughout her pregnancy. Mike still won't even acknowledge her existence. Jenny replied once, telling her, "I hope the baby grows up to betray you just like you betrayed us." The fact that Mike has now resumed speaking is a good development, although he continues to receive poor grades. He is improving and attending twice-weekly therapy sessions. We're working on appropriate ways for him to vent his frustrations, and the therapist thinks that his anger management problems are normal. Given the situation, now that the judge has seen all the evidence, the text messages plotting the conspiracy, the paternity test results demonstrating she lied about Derek being the father, and the testimony on her numerous affairs, the divorce proceedings are advancing swiftly. According to my lawyer, we should be done in about a month. I received a call from Sarah's sister yesterday, alerting me to the fact that Sarah is not handling this well. Despite being pregnant, she has been drinking a lot and complaining about how everyone has failed her when she most needs them. Until I recalled those texts in which she made fun of using Derek's gun to intimidate me, I was on the verge of feeling terrible for her. Third update. I can finally declare that my nightmare is gone. As it started 6 months ago, last month the divorce was finalized. The judge gave me Mike's primary custody and the house. Since Jenny, as an adult, custody was not a concern. Sarah only received her car and personal items. The judge explained the uneven division by pointing to her many deceptions and conspiracy with Derek. Sarah's entire existence has collapsed. Complications caused her to lose the baby at 5 months. Despite everyone's warnings, her sister admitted to me that she had been drinking excessively during her pregnancy. The real father and personal trainer Chad is opposed to her. He left his work at the gym and relocated to a different city after discovering her falsehoods and the plot with Derek. After their divorce, Derek's wife, Amy, was granted full custody of their children due to the criminal allegations. He lost his real estate license and relocated to Arizona. As far as I know, he works as a bartender and tells everyone he meets how Sarah destroyed his life. Last week, Sarah's downward spiral reached its lowest point. She arrived at our house at 2 a.m, utterly inebriated, and yelled in the driveway that she had lost everything due to one mistake. She insisted that she would stop at nothing to make things right and return home. Before I could, the neighbors phoned the police. She was jailed for 2 days for violating the restraining order. Sarah needed to face repercussions for the first time in her life. According to her sister, who declined to save her, the children are at last improving. Jenny has returned to college and is seeing the campus counselor on a regular basis. She claims that joining a support group for kids of divorced parents is assisting her in processing everything. Mike is back on the football team, and his grades have improved to B's and C's. His therapist claims that since he has acquired some coping skills, his anger management problems have much improved. Through all of this, Sarah's parents have shown surprisingly strong support. They have severed all communication with Sarah but have kept up a relationship with the children, like she used to do when Sarah and I were first married. Her mom comes over every Sunday to prepare dinner for us. On some weekends, her dad takes Mike fishing and helps him repair the hole he punched in his bedroom wall. I've begun dating a person I met via a common friend 3 years ago, Lisa, a 43-year-old high school teacher who went through her own divorce. We are moving extremely slowly since she tutored Mike in English and improved his grade. The youngsters who met her last month appear to like her. She is considerate of our circumstances and doesn't demand more than I am willing to provide. Yesterday, Sarah gave me a call from a new number. She claimed to be going to AA meetings and to have been sober for 2 weeks. She asked if I might think about giving her another chance. I blocked the number and hung up without answering. There are some betrayals from which you simply cannot recover. We're getting over it, but the kids are still dealing with it. Last week, Jenny expressed her pride in my handling of the situation, saying that I stood by them and refused to allow Sarah to re-establish her influence over us. When he turned 18, Mike requested if he could adopt my last name. He declared that he no longer desired any relationship with Sarah. Even though life isn't flawless, we're making progress. Sarah must now live with the decision she made. I don't regret the way I handled the situation. Showing your children that it's acceptable to take toxic people out of your life, even if that person is their mother, can be the most difficult aspect of being a parent. I'm genuinely looking forward to the future for the first time in months as we create a new normal. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.